This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. But yeah, right before we flicked on recording, Brett, I was going to say some of our listeners that hang out in Discord here pointed out your podcast to me a while back just to check it out, and I really dug your guys' vibe.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're doing it with your partner, right? The podcast?
Yeah, it's my wife. Yeah, we.
Okay.
So I read this series back starting when I was a kid, and we've been married now for about 5 years, but I've known her for about 15, 16 years, and I think since I started reading the series, I've tried to convince her to read it, and it finally did it in 2019. So, short decade and a half later, she finally is on board. So.
Was there something that put her over the line, or was it just constant nagging?
Constant nagging definitely had a bit of something to do with it, but also the fact that she said the only way that she would read the book was if we got to do a podcast along with it. And I said, that sounds crazy, because who podcasts? Like I've listened to podcasts, but it never crossed my mind that we could actually get one up and running. So we pretty much just over the course of a week and a half, we bought a mic, we did some research, and started going. So
I got to ask, what kind of mic are you using?
It is a black microphone on a stand.
Okay.
I describe microphones the same way I describe cars, I think.
I'm laughing because I relate.
Yeah.
Well, you said Danny's the one who does all the editing,
Yeah,
right?
She pretty much does all the behind-the-scenes work, so she's very hands-on in that sense. So it is one of the cheaper ones from Amazon. Yeah, that's honestly as far as I can tell you.
Well, it sounds pretty good. I think you guys could, invest in an upgrade if you ever wanted to.
Yeah, that's sort of the plan. So,
hey, we used our what were they like $30 to $50 microphones for the first long time when we first started.
Yeah.
The first 100 episodes were those were like six. Yeah, they were $60 mics, I think.
Yeah, so ours was about $60-$70, but that's in US dollars. So in Canadian, it was about like 120. So it's a little bit different.
Oh, right, you are from the Great White North.
Yeah, Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh man, we have a bunch of our main core listeners up there for some reason.
Right on. Well, we have nothing better to do in Alberta than listen to podcasts. So.
I was going to say big, thick books and big, long podcasts.
Pretty much,
That's how you deal with the snow, yeah. Brett, I wanted to ask you, how frustrating is it to not be able to talk about what actually happens when, Danny comes up with some really good and really accurate guesses or informed decisions? Do you ever, struggle to not be you're totally right or you're totally wrong, or
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because that's honestly one of the hardest things. I think when I first agreed to do the podcast, it didn't really sink in what I was going to put myself through, because initially you're like, hey, it's great, I can talk to my wife about this fantastic book that I've literally spent 2 decades of my life reading, but then you realize hey, she knows nothing about it, and there's so much information that I don't even know what happens in which book, because I'd never had to have a serious conversation before about the books with honestly anyone who wasn't reading them. So you don't think about that kind of thing, but it's pretty fun, and it's definitely a learning curve. Pretty much whenever she makes a prediction, I just have to say, you could be right, you could be wrong, and I'm excited to find out what happens in 4 years. So,
have you ever slipped up and accidentally given something away?
Okay. So far, I don't think I have. I've been pretty careful, because generally if I think it's going to be a spoiler, I try to stop myself. The funny part is, obviously with Twitter, there's so many names out there, but she doesn't know what names are actual names from the Wheel of Time series and which are just people's crazy usernames. So it's kind of funny when she starts to recognize names now, because we just got to Camelin. So we just found out about Elaine and Gawain and all them too. So she's starting to kind of recognize names, but she's pretty careful about not looking too in detail and that stuff too. So
that's got to be a struggle.
It is, yeah.
Well, one of the things reasons we really started the podcast is so we could just have a open spoiler conversation and not worry about what individual people know. So I feel that burden. I feel on you.
Yeah, but on the flip side, because once I kind of started getting into it, the one thing that I really appreciated about this now is like if you remember back the first time you ever read the Wheel of Time series, it's like that, the first time you read about so many of these great scenes, like, Dumai's Wells and when Matt fights Gala and Gawain and like that the fun part of reading, I get to like experience that with her and her takes on everything. So I think it's just like a really nice take to get to relive that first time read through. So
I can see how that could be fun.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of like raising a child, and like it's a lot of work, but it's fun to see the world through their eyes for the first time.
Yeah, it certainly is.
I haven't listened to it all, but what I have, I've really enjoyed the journey that you guys are providing. So, anyone who's listening to this, whether you're a longtime listener or a new listener, definitely go check out the Wheel Weaves podcast.
I agree. That's probably what I'm going to suggest to people who don't want to listen to our podcast because of spoilers. I just dug your guys' like the chill vibe of two people that know each other talking about these books, because it's similar to what me and Seth do. But I think also why people find it endearing, because it's relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, full disclosure, I got introduced to you guys through a friend of mine about a year and a half ago now, and I binge listened to everything. I think you were still on book 3 at the time, so I listened straight through, and then this last 8 months or so, everything's kind of gotten... Yeah, so I honestly haven't listened to the Shadow Rising yet, or Fires of Heaven for you, but it's pretty much just like everything, every minute of my day is now occupied with something, so...
So our voices in your head are nothing new, is what you're saying.
It's not, but it's also strange talking to you guys because you've just been a voice on my radio in the car for the last 2 years, so it's cool that you're real people, so...
Last time I checked, but sometimes I'm not so sure if I'm not just a voice.
I mean, you could be. I haven't met you in person, so there's no real way to tell.
There's a madman in my head.
In this case, you've got 2, maybe even 3. It wouldn't be so bad if you guys weren't all so crazy. So do you want to dig into Chapter 24 and actually have a chance to talk about Wheel of Time with no holds barred?
Yeah, I think I'm ready for it, hopefully, anyways.
I actually, out of character and tradition, I have just short reads for both these chapters. There didn't seem anything too terribly momentous or like that felt would make it hard for people to understand the setting. So it's just a couple of paragraphs in any case. Starting up with Chapter 24 of the Fires of Heaven, A Message Sent, and our symbol is the rising sun of Kyrian. The land changed as the sun began to sink. The hills grew lower, the thickets larger. Often, the toppled stone fences of what had been fields had become mounds sprouting wild hedges, or ran through long stands of oak and leatherleaf and hickory, pine and paperbark and trees Egwene did not know. The few farmhouses had no roofs, and trees 10 or 15 paces high grew in them here, little woods enclosed inside the stone walls, complete with twittering birds and black-tailed squirrels. The occasional rivulet caused as much talk among the Aiel as the small forest did, and the grass. They had heard tales of the wetlands, read of them in books brought from merchants and peddlers like Haddon and Kadir, but few had actually seen them since the hunt for Laman. They adapted quickly, though. The gray-brown of the tents blended well with dead leaves under trees, and with the dying grass and weeds. The camp spread over miles, marked by thousands of small cook fires in the golden dusk. Egwene was more than happy to crawl into her tent once the Guy Shane had set it up. Inside, the lamps were lit and a small fire burned in the fire pit. Unlacing her soft boots, she tugged them off, and her woolen stockings as well, and sprawled on the bright layered rugs, wriggling her toes. She wished she had a basin of water to soak her feet. She could not pretend to be as hardy as the Aiel, but she was growing soft if a few hours of walking made her feet feel twice the size. Of course, water would be no problem here, or it should not be. She remembered that shrunken stream, but surely she could even have a proper bath again. And this just kind of sets us up where, in Egwene's perspective, she's in camp with the Aiel.
Crossed the border wall with the Aiel, yeah. So they've just crossed into Kyrian, which is, I guess, the point of the chapter icon. And I guess the message sent must just be the message she sends to Elaine at the end of the chapter.
I think so.
That would make sense, yeah.
What I see here out of Egwene in this first chapter is her taking on the perspective of the Aiel.
I do feel like she's kind of Aielified. And I think that's highlighted in her meeting with Elaine. I always forget if that was in this chapter or the next one.
It's this one where she meets with Elaine with the Wise Ones, and the next chapter is without the Wise Ones.
Yes. But I think Elaine mentions it.
Yeah, I like these chapters because they're kind of a continuation of the events that we've seen so far, too. So you get to see a lot of in-detail progression of, like, Elaine with Egwene, and then Nynaeve with Egwene, too. So it's just like a continuation of all the thoughts and, plans we've seen.
There's a lot of character development in these chapters, where we see the interactions between the three women kind of continue to evolve.
Definitely. How Nynaeve's, what should I call it, attitude toward Egwene is changing very rapidly.
Yeah, there seems to be a sudden equalization of power. And if anything, Egwene is almost taking Nynaeve to task.
Yeah, I would say there'd be the shift in the power dynamic, too, just with Egwene not wanting to put up with Nynaeve anymore, too.
Yeah, she is all about not putting up with Nynaeve anymore. And soon she's about to be in charge of Nynaeve. Because we're not that far away from the summoning to be Amyrlin's seat scene.
Oh, wow. I did notice, I think chapter, flipping through pages, 26 is called Salidara.
Honestly, we're not there for very long before they summon Egwene to be Amyrlin's seat. So she doesn't get very far into Caemlyn. That she's only in, I think once they get to the city, Cairhien, which is not that far away. We have the whole battle with the Shaido and the death of Couladin first.
Yeah, and death of Couladin doesn't happen to the end of the book, I think.
Right.
If I remember,
right.
Yeah.
But I believe it's, so when I say soon, I think, in Lord of Chaos is when she becomes...
Well, it's also like soon in time, too. Like the book, we get to see alternate people going on, too, at the same time, so...
Well, from now on, everything's soon in time. There's actually a quote here where she says, like, I've been out of the Two Rivers for a year and a half, and it's like, yeah, and the last battle is, like, in 6 months.
Yeah, so it's going to speed up a little bit here.
It speeds up a lot. Yeah, there's and of course, there's the famous book that's 10 days or 11 days, and then the book after that that's actually goes back in time, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that as the series progresses. So we're, only, a quarter of the way through, but we've lived through, 3/4 of the amount of time that the series takes place over.
And that's where I really feel like these are the characters, for the most part, that we live with for the rest of the series, if that makes sense. They do continue to evolve a little bit, but they've really... past that hero point where they all sort of they're all heroes in their own way now.
Leveled up, and reached their
they've
final
all leveled
form.
up. Right. All the women are Aes Sedai. Matt has his Ashendari and his luck. Perrin is with the wolves. They're not gods yet, which they will get to, but they're definitely heroes.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's kind of like the story of they all had to grow up really quick, just under circumstances, so...
That has left some scars on them. We see Elaine's PTSD here. We see Rand's PTSD, obviously, in a lot of scenes. And in that way, they mirror each other. Some of that, I think that hardness comes from the trauma they've gone through. Yeah,
especially with Egwene and the Shanshan, right? So there's a lot of issues that kind of show themselves in the later of these two chapters.
In a lot of ways, Rand's box is a lot like Egwene's collar, and that hasn't happened to him yet.
I never really thought about the similarity, but yeah, that's very similar.
Being captured, taken involuntarily, trauma, not trusting that group of people who took you prisoner. Yeah, there's just a lot of parallels.
So I feel like up into the break when Egwene falls asleep, I don't have too much to say. She has a lot of thoughts about Elaine and Nynaeve, and she's just kind of curling up and accidentally falls asleep. And wakes up in Tel Riyadh a little sooner than she's supposed to be there.
I have a few funny comments and a few little questions.
Yeah.
Do you think she doesn't recognize the dark meat? Rabbit, she told herself? Do you think it's rabbit, or do you think it's like lizard or snake?
Oh, I did wonder.
I was even thinking something like, small woodland creatures like gophers or squirrels or just something that typically wouldn't be on the menu, but
You got an army marching through, so you eat what you can.
Rabbit is very gamey. I don't know, though. I've never had lizard, but I wouldn't put it past the Aiel.
I mean, why not, right? So
Sure.
They talk about eating the blood snake after she kills it. They're delicious. It's fine. And there's actually a whole quote. This is what I wanted to point out. There's a quote where Avienda feeds Rand a blood snake that she kills, and he's like, delicious, and like deliberately chokes it down just to spite her. And then you have this quote here where Elaine's saying she's willing to bet that Rand could not even look at what he was eating. Men were always picky eaters, and just the inherent. Why do I always want to? I can never remember the word for it, but it's a hypocriticism almost of the species, where it's like, yeah, you're the one who doesn't want to look at me.
She's
but you're assuming
trying to lie to
can't.
herself.
It's, a little bit of projection there, I think.
yeah, I think it's also like Egwene's never really, in my mind, whenever I read Egwene, she never gets past the, Rand's no longer the village boy.
And then the other comment I want to talk about was the flame, the blade, and the heart.
Oh yeah, I put a couple things there too.
Romance novel.
Yeah, I was just about to say, is that the one that's supposed to be like a romance novel about heroes? I guess it is.
In particular, Brigida.
Yeah, and I think a bit of foreshadowing, because when Egwene wakes up in Tel'aran'rhiod, for lack of a better word, or shows up there, she spots Elaine chatting with Brigida.
My question is, a lot of times dreamers fall asleep and they wake up thinking about the thing they fell asleep to. Like, so if they're thinking about the Stone of Tyr, that's where they wake up. So I have to wonder if maybe reading about Brigida didn't help her find Brigida.
That's definitely a possibility, but I also feel like anytime that Elaine or Nynaeve go into Tel'aran'rhiod, they're not exactly careful about where they hang out. Like, Elaine's talking to Brigida right there in the stone too, isn't she?
Yeah. We talk about that sometimes. Like, this is where everyone meets. Like, can you think of something original?
It's like Party Central, and you're just surprised when other people show up and, ambush you sometimes. So,
and let's talk about the fact that Moghedien is watching this whole thing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Do you think she's watching from the moment that Egwene arrives, or possibly before that?
Before that, because she comments that she saw Brigida and Elaine talking.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that it's like a repeated statement too from Egwene, where she keeps thinking that, oh no, there's no way there's watchers here, but it's clearly there's watchers here, but she just doesn't pick up on it or take it seriously.
Yeah, get out of the stone.
The unseen watchers are real.
But hey, I wanted to bring it back to that book, because with that whole book, and it's a romance book tied in with action and adventure and fighting, but it's kind of interesting just with Aiel culture that Avienda is still almost embarrassed to talk about the fact that she likes the romance part of it, when, there is romance in Aiel culture. Like, it is a little bit different than the Western ideals, but...
Yeah, I think they're just more about keeping it private in some senses, I guess.
And that comes back to my theory that she secretly really is in love with Rand and kind of upset about it, because she knows, like, she's going to have to marry him, but it's going to violate her toe. So she's like reading this romance novel and thinking about Rand and being like really kind of in love, but at the same time trying not to admit it to anybody.
She's hung up on this agreement with Elaine. And a couple chapters back, Avienda asks Egwene if she thinks Elaine would ever consider doing the multiple marriage thing. I want to say sister wife, but that's not the Aiel term.
Yeah, that's basically it. The first sister.
But that the point is that Egwene says, like, no, I don't think so. Like, Wetlander women don't like that. I feel like Avienda takes that, and although it's sort of out of context for Egwene, she doesn't actually know what the real question is.
Right.
And I think she takes it to heart.
And really does say, oh God, I guess this was the only possible way to get out of this with my G and toe intact, and now it's not going to happen.
Yes, and just for context, Egwene shows up. She's kind of standing in a different part of the Heart of the Stone than Elaine is. She hears two women talking, thinks that they're probably Black Aja or something, and creeps around a corner, sees Elaine and Brigida talking. And more or less at that moment, Amis shows up.
She had almost grown accustomed to the feel of unseen eyes in this vast chamber. Only the columns and the shadows and all this empty space. And Moghedien.
Just hanging out.
And Brigida.
Actual unseen eyes.
And then the other quote I want to bring up is, the Wise Ones claim that control of Teleron-Riyadh was as strong as the one power here, but she knew her abilities with the power were far better and trusted them more. And that is why Perrin will always kick her ass in Teleron-Riyadh.
Even contrary to what the Wise Ones are saying, the mastery of the dream, if you're in the dream, is more powerful than being able to channel.
It's just a weave. If you can deflect balefire, you can basically stop anyone from doing anything. You can break somebody's mind to prevent them from channeling. Like, if you were strong in Teleron-Riyadh. And Egwene doesn't, I don't think, really get that until she breaks Messana.
I'm going to nod to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have you guys ever had a conversation? You might have already had a conversation about like a who versus who in the World of Dreams, like who would win?
Oh, no, not really.
Okay. Yeah, it's always kind of like made me think about who would be the, ultimate winner. I think by the end of the series, Perrin would be like the ultimate, but I mean, he's got a long way to go.
Of all the dreamers in general?
Yeah. Of all the dreamers, I would put him above, just for the fact that, that last book, Perrin, pretty much breaks out of a domination in the World of Dreams there, so.
The ability to teleport back and forth between Teleron-Riyadh and the real world is just super OP. Like, because you can, and especially if you can pull someone into the World of Dreams and then control the world around them, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah, we don't see a ton of that. I do kind of always wish that we could see more of, like, the weaponized Teleron-Riyadh.
But, like, okay, here's one. Moghedien versus Lanfear. They both think they're the best. They both say they're the best. Which one's better?
And I think that would come down to tactics, too. At that point, it might not just be raw strength.
I agree. My instinct was to say maybe I kind of want to favor Moghedien because I think she's better at keeping hidden. I almost feel like Lanfear's pride might be a problem.
Yeah, like Lanfear would want a one-on-one battle, and Moghedien would not.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I kind of think of Lanfear as the one who, like, dominates the light parts of the World of Dreams, and Moghedien, like, scurries around in the shadows. And, like, Lanfear can never find her in the shadows, but Moghedien really couldn't challenge Lanfear in the light. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would agree with that, yeah.
In like a formalized duel of some kind, I think Lanfear would probably win, but I want to favor Moghedien because I think that, she would never do that.
I mean, the fact that she's spying on one of the Heroes of the Horn in Teleron-Riyadh is pretty impressive.
Just a little side note, did you guys ever grow up watching Animal Face-Off by chance? This reference might not make any sense if you haven't.
Animal Face-Off?
Yeah.
Oh, was that...
So it was a TV show back, it's got to be about 12, 15 years ago or so, because I used to watch it in high school. But they would essentially take two animals, like a tiger versus a hippopotamus, and they would say who would beat who, and they'd have two professionals who were like, who knew the animals, and they'd run stats for the animals, and then they'd like simulate a battle between the two. And
I remember watching some of these. Yeah,
I did see it.
It's like Discovery Channel or something.
I think it was Discovery Channel. But it just makes me think like Wise One versus Perrin, right? At their peaks, who could win? So I would love to like run a simulation.
Gaul versus a Wise One.
In the World of Dreams?
Yeah.
I think Wise One would take him.
Yeah, he learned fast though.
I think so. And
he did.
Possibly for a similar reason that I think that Moghedien might beat Lanfear in that kind of fight. I just feel like the Wise Ones would be better at subterfuge. We know they're good at hiding themselves.
And you do have to give props to Gaul, because Gaul did like pick up very quickly, and he was really forced to learn. But it's still, when it comes down to it, I don't think he knew that much. Like, he still had a long ways to go.
Sure. And he was aided by the wolves quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
Who are naturally... Okay, wolves versus the Wise One.
Wolves
so like
versus...
50 wolves versus 50 wise ones?
They'd all share a cup of tea and go on their merry way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what condition would the Wise Ones and the wolves actually be fighting? I almost can't, like, come up with a scenario where they'd be like, no, you must die. And it's like, no, that would never happen.
Everyone in Discord is saying the wolves.
Well, it's their natural habitat, right?
Yeah.
The wolf dream.
The wise ones don't make that effective of a fighting force kind of ever.
They don't, they have no training in that. Until, I mean, they get a little bit of experience later in the series, but I feel like up until now, the Aiel really haven't weaponized channeling in any way. It's almost kind of strange to think about. They have all this ability, but that they really don't seem to use very much. Although I suppose you could say that about the Aes Sedai as well.
A remnant of the Way of the Leaf?
Yeah.
It could be. They just don't have a value for the one power in that regard. Like, the one power isn't something they used to fight. They never do it in their culture, so.
Yeah, right? Like, we never see a wise one, like, go even battle Shadow Spawn or something, as at least, again, before when they do, later in the series.
Yeah. Right. Back when everybody's doing it, sure, but, you know, they're not... It's not like the Waste is the killing land because the wise ones team up and, like, fucking balefy the Trollocs. It's the killing land because of the spearmen and women.
Yeah.
That kill them all. So it's interesting that they really never needed to learn how to channel as a weapon, as wise ones. They were protected. Yeah,
and not just and protected by their culture as well, right? Because they'd never be attacked by anyone, so...
And so that's one of those things where, like, why would you would never even need to develop defenses or battle attack plan? Like, you're safe in any battle. You'd walk through the middle of a fight and people would just nod and let you go on. So yeah, I can see how that would, like, prevent them from learning how to actually battle channel.
Yeah, just lack of necessity.
I guess I'll bring us back to Egwene talking to the wise ones here. I mean, also Elaine. Amis and Bear show up. I believe Amis first. Egwene is expecting to be in trouble for being there without her teachers as escort, although they seem to kind of brush it off and say, as long as you weren't here too long, like, we get it. You made a mistake. You fell asleep and woke up here and waited.
Yeah, that seems to be reasonable. The only other comment I have there is she's always like, I wonder where the Heroes of the Horn wait. Couldn't be here, could it? And it's like, yeah, that's exactly where it is.
Everywhere? Nowhere?
Try the world of dreams.
I feel that's the same way Egwene talks about lots of her, visions and viewings, and even in being a dreamer. It's like she looks at it, she notices it, but she doesn't quite connect those last two dots.
Oh, yeah.
She slowly puts it together by the end of these two chapters. She knows exactly what's going on. She's like, oh my gosh, that was actually Brigida. But she can't be told, even though she knows.
Yeah. Do you think that she put together that, the Heroes of the Horn live in Teleran Riyadh?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a quote that I'll point out when we get to it where I think she realizes it.
Okay.
But I think it's in the next chapter. Once she confirms it by Elaine's reaction, she's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is what's going on.
Bear wants to chastise Elaine for being in Teleran Riyadh at all, as the wise ones always want to do, and for being untrained.
Did you catch the little threesome that's going on?
What do you mean?
If Mullane was not with Bale and Dorinda tonight,
oh right,
she would be here as well. And I'm like, wait, they just got married. They must be having a good time.
Yeah, we don't hear any specifics on how that works exactly, but well, they all hang out at least.
Also, I'd like to just point out that Perrin is on his honeymoon at this point, traveling to Camelin.
Aw.
Just in case we've forgotten what Perrin's doing right now.
So the next time we pick him up, he's in Camelin?
Yeah, he shows up to find Rand.
I think in the next book.
Yeah, because he's there when Rand disappears and is kidnapped, and he organizes the party that tracks him down. But yeah, he's pulled there by the Taviran tugging. He goes on a big talk about that at the beginning of the next book about how, he couldn't stay in Two Rivers. He could feel Rand pulling him back.
I got to give it to Perrin too, just because he always seems like, maybe alternatively to Matt, Perrin seems to listen to that intuition a little bit more and go with it versus Matt, who always seems to fight that pulling.
You might say some of Matt's worst mishaps are because he's fighting the Taviran pulling, like when he gets a wall dropped on him.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, you got to stay here for a while. Don't even think about going anywhere.
Lay down.
I always feel like Perrin's the more introspective of the characters just because he's so used to, like, thinking things through and really just digging into his own internal dialogue. So
there are times when he shuts it down deliberately, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Specifically when he's trying to find Fael, as he sort of turns off his internal monologue just to and just drives towards one purpose, and all of his, it's like when he's got a blacksmith puzzle. All he's doing is thinking about the puzzle. He's just turning it over in his hands, and that's...
Yeah, I feel like that whole searching for Fael thing is like a big asterisk in his, reason. Yeah.
But he's super effective while he's doing it at putting a coalition together. He just doesn't really get why. He's putting the pattern is kidnapped his wife so that he puts together a coalition so that he has a coalition in the last battle to fight with. And he wouldn't do that voluntarily, so the pattern's like, fine.
Gonna kidnap your wife.
Kidnap your wife and give you a reason to cry. Huh?
That's an interesting way to look at it.
No one said the pattern was going to be nice to you, so...
No, it just makes you do what it needs, right?
Yeah.
It needs you to have an army, and if it has to kidnap your wife to accomplish that, it'll kidnap your wife to accomplish that.
That is an interesting way to look at it. I really can't see Perrin putting an army together without having some kind of dire reason. It just doesn't seem like him.
He didn't want to. He didn't want to. And it wasn't until it was already together that he was like, fine, I'll take it. I'll take responsibility for it. So that's my contradiction to your theory of him being the most responsible, is that the pattern basically forced him to... Whereas Matt, at least, was like, army? Yeah, I'll take one of those. They're protecting. Matter of fact, I'll take 2.
Seems like a good way to not get stabbed.
Exactly.
Over the next couple pages here, I thought it was a little bit interesting that as Bear is kind of scolding Elaine says, I'd love to come study with you, but I have to go my own way. On the task given me by the Amerlin seat. A dead woman, Bear said coldly. You claim obedience to a dead woman. And it just the conversation just sort of drops off, and they sort of change the subject after that. I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say about that?
Well, just that they got news that Suan was deposed and stilled and killed, even though that wasn't entirely true. So I don't really have a lot to say about it other than they're going to stay the course for now.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, I think they believe in their mission, if anything, or it's even just the fact that Egwene kind of alluded to it earlier when she said, Nynaeve and Elaine love adventure, right? They love the pull of adventure, so they're just kind of continuing that until someone reels them in otherwise.
Yeah, she's not the only one, or they're not the only ones.
It certainly gives them a purpose.
And they do want to help Rand, and they know that Elida is not the right person. They're like, we cannot be obedient to Elida because she is going to try and do what she did to Rand.
I'm nodding.
Yeah, they even say here, they're like, I bet we'll find an alternative tower with all the Ajahs, including the blue, except the red. They do predict that pretty well.
Oh yeah, they do have some accurate predictions. I will kind of glaze over. Egwene says, why did you come tonight and not Nynaeve? Egwene had been expecting Nynaeve, who apparently got a little beat up fighting another woman over boys in the circus.
So that woman ends up marrying Luca.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
So that Littell ends up being Luca's wife when we come back to the circus. And basically, she got pissed off because there's these 4, acrobatic boys, and if we can, they call themselves brothers, but they all look very different, but we can assume muscular, attractive dudes in general, the Ch24 boys. And so Littell gets all jealous that the Ch24 boys are trying to flirt with Nynaeve.
They're saddling up.
They get in a fight, totally. And Nynaeve, of course, is not interested because she's got Lan on the mind. But she is very attractive, and I think it's just one of those fun little world-building things where...
She apparently, beat up everyone.
Everyone, yeah. She just browbeats people into getting what she wants, and she eventually browbeats Luca into marrying her.
Oh, I mean, Littell starts hitting Nynaeve with a stick, and then Nynaeve turns around and attacks her, and people try to pull Nynaeve off, and she injures all of them as well. Is what it sounds like. It is just a cute story.
I gotta respect Nynaeve, because, Nynaeve never is shy about throwing fists either. She'll be the first one to get in there.
Or elbows.
I love that about her.
Oh, yeah. She never really lets that part go.
She always talks about getting elbowed, Nynaeve throws elbows in bed. You gotta wonder if that's related to throwing fists in a fight.
She doesn't have to be awake.
Jesus brings up an interesting point that Nynaeve never really experienced being a pretty girl in society because she became really important when she was young, and so she never really got to be like a young pretty girl pursued by dudes, and so doesn't really know how to handle it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like she handles it by not handling it at all.
Yeah, she's saying the wisdom is dancing. There's a reference to that scene in Eye of the World. But yeah, she's a very young woman when she's promoted, for lack of a better term, or voted in as wisdom. And after that, you're a member of a position of authority.
And she has to like be extra serious. Even someone who was older in that position of authority could actually maybe relax occasionally, but she couldn't because she was so young.
To try to overcompensate for, people saying, what, that young slip of a girl's a wisdom?
And because of the slowing, it never got better.
You mean it never got worse?
Well, she never looked older, so they kept thinking she was like a kid, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Egwene threatens Nynaeve through Elaine. Tell her to shape up or ship out, basically.
Yeah, and she had better Nynaeve had better keep her temper in check, because if she channels, then, Elida might find out as fast as a pigeon can fly where exactly they are. There's a little looming anxiety about that.
I also wanted to say I like Amos and Bear's exchange, just because when they're hearing about how Nynaeve is acting in the real world, about like beating people up, it's definitely shifting their perception of how Aes Sedai act, because they're still under the assumption that they're all Aes Sedai, I think.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that they are sort of like being like, wow, these are just women like any other women, and if they can get like beat up with a stick and roll around in the mud.
Yeah.
Doesn't say much about the storied Aes Sedai.
Yeah, they've been on a pedestal for so long as Aes Sedai and these like mythical or near mythical beings to the Aiel, and now it's like, well, they're gonna throw fists. So
they're people, as it turns out.
And that's something that I think, doesn't Moraine say that early on, that you'll find that power, or is it Varen, says you'll find that power doesn't really change a person. We're still the same bunch of squabbling women that you'll find in any other group.
Shellerific says Moraine said that.
Moraine, yeah. And we see that with the Seanchan, we see that with the Wise Ones, we see that with the Kin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always squabbling inside any group. Everyone has disagreements. And then there's the clever message before the next chapter.
In Egwene's kind of threats to Nynaeve, she kind of pretends to be chastising both Elaine and Nynaeve for acting in all the ways that we were just talking about, and says, in fact, I wish I had both of you alone. If we were in the tower, in our old rooms, I'd say a few weird words to the pair of you. Elaine, we find out later, gets it, but responds in a believable way to the Wise One observers.
I mean, Elaine stiffening and looking arrogant is pretty much her response to everything, so yeah, that's pretty believable.
Elaine says we're learning a great deal about the Seanchan from Sarandon. I think I'm saying that right. The Shreddit handler.
And you notice the mention of a particular court?
Oh yeah, Court of the Nine Moons.
And I think this is one of the first places where we actually hear the Court of the Nine Moons mentioned. I think it's mentioned once earlier, actually before Matt goes through the doorway. But this is one of the ways that we knew that the Daughter of the Nine Moons would be from Seanchan pretty early on in the series. That was a big clue back in the day.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I gotta say, I just went right on by that and didn't even notice that that's the first reference. Like, it literally tells us, Elaine literally tells us what the Court of the Nine Moons is.
Yeah, where the Seanchan Empress sits.
Yeah, she says that.
And so you know the Daughter of the Nine Moons is going to be the daughter of the Seanchan Empress. Like, it's right there in black and white.
Yep, I've read this series a ton of times, never noticed that it happens that early. We see a little further explanation of the Adam and Suldam and all that. I don't think we really need to go over it. Everybody understands what's happening there.
I had one question I just kind of wanted to, point out here, because I find this is a really interesting notion for a lot of the Randland people, is anytime the Seanchan are mentioned, or after like the Seanchan are beaten back the first time, it seems like everyone almost forgets about them. Because we even have Amos saying, I don't understand the interest in the Seanchan. Althor defeated them and they're gone. But everyone's acting as if they're never going to come back. And it's just kind of a weird sentiment, because you get that from, like, the Aes Sedai. You get that from the Wise Ones here. You get that from everybody who hasn't, like, actually interacted with the Shan-Chan, that, oh, they're gone, so they must be gone forever.
That's a good point.
Yeah, look at it from their perspective, right? This group of people came across an ocean that no one's ever come across before, that we've tried to sail across, and it takes months. So we beat back the small group of people. Best case scenario, they have to sail all the way back across the ocean, tell people about their loss, gather up another army, and then come all the way back. Like, that's not going to happen. And if it does, then we'll be back on the coast, and we'll beat them back again. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal.
Yeah.
They have no idea the size of the army and the settlement that's coming.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just always like it's almost frustrating as a reader when they just brush off the Shan-Chan so fast.
Sure, especially when Egwene has her dreams, and she's having prophetic dreams, which you're seeing a little bit here. I particularly wanted to actually read this paragraph to bring up the sort of the PTSD stuff we've talked about. We can see it here in her face.
With Egwene?
With Egwene, yeah. They had put an Adom on her in Falma. They had meant to send her over the Aerith Ocean to Shan-Chan to spend the rest of her life as a dog on a leash. Fury welled up in her every time she thought of them, and fear, too. The fear that if they did return, they would succeed in taking and holding her this time. That was what she could not allow them to see, the stark terror that she knew was in her eyes. That's deep-seated pain.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
Uncontrolled fury and fear and stark terror. Like, those are the words she's describing whenever the Shan-Chan come up.
And I totally understand her point of view of having that stark terror, just because she had a first-hand experience, and so many people did not.
No, almost nobody was collared and escaped.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point too, Brett, what you just said, that because the Supergirls have a direct experience with the Shan-Chan, they maybe don't underestimate them so much, but also that I feel like it's similarly kind of perplexing to me to watch other people dismiss the Shan-Chan, but without having seen it or have really any first-hand knowledge, maybe it's not too surprising that they're dismissive. Whereas part of me wants to say, like, these mysterious people showed up out of nowhere with an army to conquer your land, and you're not, like, a little curious.
Yeah,
like you don't want to, like, have a conversation about this or anything.
Yeah. And no one knows that it was like the Horn of Valir that helped drive them back. So
that's true.
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny to know too that if Egwene hadn't been collared and didn't have such a deep-rooted hatred for this Shan-Chan, like, maybe hatred isn't the right word, but like fear and terror too. I'm sure hatred is bundled into those emotions. But when the Shan-Chan attacked the White Tower directly, like, who's to say she would have fought as hard as she did? Because I believe 100% that a large reason why Egwene did as much as she did at the White Tower attack was because she was thinking to herself, like, no way am I ever going back to you guys. So,
absolutely.
Like, I will burn myself out before I, get collared again. So,
yeah, a little rage and resentment to complement the regular combat.
Definitely helps, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps when you can actually cast fireballs at your enemies, that you can, like, channel that rage into actual fire.
Yeah. Let us finish what we were here for, Bear said briskly. You need to be asleep in truth, Egwene. We had the guy Shane undress you and put you in your blankets. Surprisingly, Amis sounded as gentle as Elaine. When you return to your body, you can sleep until morning. Egwene's cheeks colored. Given Aiel ways, it was as likely as not that some of those Gaishain had been men. She would have to speak with them about that. Delicately, of course. They would not understand, but it was not a thing she could be comfortable explaining.
I think they did that deliberately. I think they knew she went to sleep too early and was in Teleron Riyadh, and so deliberately shamed her because they knew being undressed by Gaishain would shame her. I think that was the Wise One's casual, backhanded way of being like, don't get caught doing that again.
That sounds right, yeah.
The fear was gone, she realized. Apparently I'm more afraid of being embarrassed than I am of the Shan-Chan. It was not true, but she held to the thought. There was really little to tell Elaine. They were in Cairhien, finally, that Couladin had devastated Celian. Probably butchering that, guys, but Celian, one of the cities that Couladin already went through, and ravaged the surrounding land. That the Shaido were still days ahead and moving west. The wise ones knew more than she. They had not taken to their tents straight away. There had been skirmishes in the evening, small ones, and only a few, with mounted men who quickly fled, and other men on horses who had been sighted ran without fighting. There had been no prisoners taken. Moraine and Land seemed to think that the riders could have been bandits, or supporters of one or another of the houses trying to claim the Sun Throne. All had been equally ragged. Whoever they were, word would soon spread that there were more Aiel in Cairhien. They had to learn sooner or later, was Elaine's only comment. Egwene watched Elaine as she and the Wise Ones faded away. To her, it seemed as though Elaine and the Heart of the Stone became more and more attenuated, but her golden-haired friend gave no sign as to whether she had understood the message.
Do you think Moraine and Lan are right about who those people are? Just
probably
bandit Cairhienin who are isolated by the attack, and farmers maybe who don't have anywhere to go?
Either bandits or some lord soldiers who are out scouting and see, a small group of Aiel scouts or something and try to attack them and are quickly repelled. Cairhien's in chaos, so it's hard to say. They may just be desperate people trying to survive outside the city somewhere.
I was just thinking, just when you asked that question, now Ravine is right now in Caemlyn, obviously doing his whole deal. Is there a possibility that those bandits had something to do with him? I'm just thinking off the top of my head here now that you kind of brought up that question.
Well, I mean, they're in Cairhien, so it'd be hard. I don't think his troops have quite reached all the way across yet.
Yeah, I was even thinking like as some sort of like scouting party. Maybe not. Probably nothing there, but you asked the question, so I had to, kind of pick my brain.
No, that's a good idea.
Yep, better than anything I came up with. It could be Andoran outriders. As Ravine sending troops across, scouts. That's pretty deep for them to be this early.
Honestly, I just have to trust Moraine and Lan at this point. I don't think we get enough information. We never refer back to this again. The rumors I think it's just RJ saying, "Yep, rumors are spreading." That was always one of his main themes. Is like you see when people see this, and all of a sudden the rumors are off without any real information.
Lots of people saw and ran away, so they're the cat's
Aiel
out of
are
the bag.
coming.
Yeah.
Aiel are coming. Yeah. 1 by land, 2 by sea.
Always by land.
Always by land.
Do we ever see is Avienda ever on a boat in the ocean?
Totally. She gets super seasick, but not because of the motion, just because looking at all the water makes her sick. And Elaine is like, "Oh, when I get seasick, I like to just look at the mast."
That's like swaying back and forth. Yeah.
And then Avienda's like, If I was brave, I'd look out over the ocean." She looks out over the ocean and goes, "Nope, I'm not brave." Looks back at the mast.
I mean, being out of sight of land is pretty scary for me, and I'm a good swimmer. So, if I fell overboard, I could stay afloat for, I don't know, a real long time, but it's still scary, Can't imagine what it would be like for someone who's never seen that much water and can't swim.
I feel like if you can't swim, it's like, well, if I fall in the water, I'm dead, right? I feel like if you can't swim, you're like, if I fall in the water, I'm dead after hours of struggle.
Hours and hours and hours, yeah. If it's a nice warm summer day, I could probably lay out there all afternoon.
I mean, honestly, if the water's warm enough, I could probably survive for a week or two, in salt water, just floating and starving to death.
I wonder how long it takes.
It depends on how quickly you get dehydrated, really.
This is a question
that's
for
what's
Google.
Gonna kill you.
Oh, yeah. A couple days, I guess. Anyway.
Okay, and on that note...
on that light note...
Anyone who's listening to this, whether you're a long-time listener or a new listener, definitely go check out the Wheel Weaves podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?